Hey out there, this is Wednesday, November 27th, 2019, and it is just about 13 minutes past 8 in the evening here in Northern California. And I'm going to really try to be brief this evening. And we got Thanksgiving Day tomorrow, and I hope everybody gets to spend time with loved ones. And I'm looking forward to that. Um, So, the stuff I get into, I call kind of psycho spiritual financial issues that we have in America and by extension the rest of the world. And in fact, I strongly contend that America is affecting things all over the world because we are the most influential nation on earth, like the trendsetters. And a big part of that reason is for that is that we have the world reserve currency. And the reason we have the world reserve currency is because we have the most formidable military, and we can pretty much demand that all the nations accept our currency. And if they don't, well, we can make their lives miserable, basically. Kind of a might makes right philosophy. But I like to discuss how people are being tyrannized if they don't know, so they don't blame the wrong causes. Don't blame people in your local communities. Remember, the problems that we have in our local communities are stemming from the very top of the food chain. And the top of the food chain, the very tippy top, is the money printing class. Of course, we call it the Federal Reserve Bank. And next in line is the top politicians, those that rubber stamp the whims of the money printing class. And the money printing class would contest that, and they would say, "Well, no, it's you stupid American people. You're driving your own country in debt. You're the ones asking to borrow money from us." And so they're going to pass the buck on to the top politicians. So whoever it is, they're collaborators. They're colluding together to tyrannize the American people at large, and again, by extension, the rest of the world. And it's all starting in California. As they say, as goes California, so goes the rest of the nation, and of course, again, by extension, the rest of the world. So what's happening here is theft. It's pretty much been normalized now that it's okay to steal from the productive class, the workers, the blue collar class. And I object vociferously, and I sure wish everybody would. I don't really have much regard for unions unless said unions are looking after the rights of the regular workers, because all the workers are important, and you got to admit that the workers that are literally essential, imperative to the welfare of society, are often the minimum wage workers, the low end workers. And if all those workers united and they decided to go on strike, they could literally shut the nation down in short order. You understand? So I being that I'm not necessarily so smart, but I look, I see, I observe, I deduce, I put two and two together, and I see just what an evil, ungodly plan that these top evildoers have, these top politicians and the money printing class, and what they're doing, and how the Labor Department is deliberately remiss in order to have this happen. They've allowed minimum wage to fall far behind the real cost of living. They've allowed our standard of living to fall through the floor, to plummet over the last several decades. They couldn't do this thing overnight. They never could have got away with it. It'd be like telling the workers in the early 60s, when $1 an hour was minimum wage and you could afford you could realize the American dream, home ownership, middle class lifestyle on that $1 an hour. So today you figure out what it's going to take for you to do that, where one person in the family could be working and the other could stay home and take care of the family. If both worked, you could live an upper middle class life. or if you had any kind of skill or special trade at all, then you could live an upper middle class life. Landscapers, mechanics, et cetera, window washers, anybody that was skilled in what they did, they could afford an upper middle class life in the early 1960s with any kind of trade, any kind of skill above just a minimum wage job, working at a grocery store or a factory, a farm, that sort of thing, a food service industry perhaps. So you see why I am upset about what has happened in my beloved, precious nation, America. And it really is far more than unfortunate. It's really ghastly, I would say. It's a horrific turn of events that, again, they couldn't have got away with pulling this in short order. They had to do it gradually, slowly. Again, the analogy of the frogs in the pot of water is very apropos for the situation, because they got to do it slowly. They got to cook us slowly. They've got to tyrannize us slowly. They've got to steal the wealth of our nation, and that wealth I'm talking about belongs to the people, all the people. If we've got any semblance of capitalism, it creates a rising tide of prosperity that lifts all boats. It doesn't rise some boats to the highest heavens while swamping other boats. That's not capitalism. At its very best, that's what you might call crony capitalism, a kleptocracy perhaps. It's not true capitalism in any way, shape, or form. Fascism is suitable because the government's gotten involved now. They figured out that, hey, well, you know what? If we drive the cost of housing up, an essential human need. So again, there's great clear cause to object to the government working against the best interests of the people when the people are their employers. You understand? We pay the salaries of all these politicians. So these people working in the government, they understand. They put two and two together. They figured out that, hey, we raise the cost of housing and real estate, we're going to get more property taxes, and more property taxes means we can give ourselves raises. So it's not difficult to understand the motivation behind what's going on here, the scheme, the scam. You got collusive special interest groups in the housing industry that go along with this. You got the real estate agents, you've got the property managers, you've got the landlords, you've got speculators and flippers, and even the innocent homeowner would go along with this scheme saying, hey, my property value went up. So what? I mean, that's capitalism. And it isn't capitalism. Capitalism is an older car that goes down. It depreciates in value. It doesn't go up in value unless you've got a cherried out classic that's coveted, a particular model perhaps. But when it comes to housing, it doesn't. It's a dilapidated, a fixer-upper. Of course, it's cheap. It goes down in worth. That people want the new houses, but instead, what we got is all these insatiable, voracious, rapacious investors out there. They read one of Robert Kiyosaki's books, Rich Dad, the mogul, the real estate mogul. That'll tell you. I haven't even read any of his books, but I can surmise just from knowing the business. I had my California real estate license. I know what goes on. But he's going to teach you, hey, what you do is you got to have good credit, and you just get OPM, other people's money. You go to the bank and you make a deal. See, you become a collaborator with the bank. So you're kind of partnered up with the banksters, teamed up. And you borrow money, you get these fixer-uppers. This is the low-hanging fruit. These homes that are coveted by some struggling young couple that's trying to get into their first home, their starter home. So you got to dash their hopes and dreams, and you got to grab all that low-hanging fruit, hand over fist. You get it, and you take it, and you get that money from the bank, and you fix it up, and you rent it out right away, and you get as much as you can, whatever the market will bear. And it's been bearing a lot more, over the years. And the reason is because of market manipulation, shenanigans. We used to have, about 15 years ago, the majority California residents were homeowners. Today, they're renters. And that ratio, that disparity, that discrepancy is increasing as I speak. And this is going to spread across the country. The investors are like insatiable locusts. And once they destroy California, and people are, there's the word's out, people are leaving. They're discouraged, they're disheartened, and they're saying, I can't take it anymore. Too much burden, too much pressure, too much stress. Landlord keeps raising my rent. The property value is too high. I can't do it. I've got to be able to have some semblance of security in my old age. And when they realize that's hopeless here, and even if they were willing to go get welfare, put down their pride and go get Section 8 to help them with their housing costs, it's not there, obviously, as evidenced through the axiomatic evidence of people sleeping out in the cold, dying out in the cold. You got tent cities in Los Angeles and everywhere else in California. So they realize it's hopeless. There obviously must not be any welfare left, but yet they're still shipping in all the refugees and migrants, and they come in through the Catholic Church. They got different agencies that work and different individuals that help out, and they bring them all in, right? That neglect our native-born American sons and daughters, let them perish out in the cold. Not criminals, just destitute people. If they were criminals, they'd be behind bars with 3 hots and a cot. Do you understand? So they're not willing to do that to survive. They'll die out in the cold before they end up being criminals. But there's obviously no more welfare left. This Section 8 housing, this $50 billion a year we spend on that is obviously gone. Or else there wouldn't be any homeless, because the whole idea is to subsidize poor people that can't afford to pay their rent. You understand? So they come in with this Section 8 subsidy. So isn't that exactly why we have homelessness? Because they don't have any money. There's no affordable housing for them out there. That's the whole idea. Do you understand what's going on here, how the scam works? How miserable it makes our lives, how onerous, how it drives up everything else. If one commodity that you can't get away from, like housing, continues to go up in price, you're looking for ways to increase your income for whatever services you offer, commodities you offer, or combination thereof. You either need to make more money to crack that ever harder nut, to reach that ever higher bar, or you're going to be the next guy out in the cold sleeping under the bridge, right? It's either that or you find a way to reduce your cost of living. And this is what I try to tell people. Look for a way to reduce your cost of living. I've got a very low cost of living, relatively speaking. Okay? I'm not going to get into specifics, but it's exceedingly low. But that's good for me. But what are you doing? I mean, it's good. I can boycott a high cost of living, boycott financial tyranny in that regard. I'm lucky. I kind of just lucked out, really, because it's a roll of the dice. That it's not that easy, but you've got to seek a lower cost of living. It's either that or you just comply and conform to the whims of whoever keeps increasing your cost of living. And you go out and figure out ways to make more money. And so I tell you, hey, there's two ways to skin a cat here. And you can either lower your cost of living, that's one way out, or you can just comply and continue to increase your cost of living. And if you are financially well off enough to keep paying those rent increases, think of others. You obviously you can't afford to be a homeowner, but you say I can comfortably afford to rent. But how are you helping somebody else that's really struggling when that next $50 rent increase is going to be the straw that broke the camel's back and it's going to land them out in the cold? How are you helping them? So I tell you, do what you can to help other people. By lowering your own cost of living, you're helping somebody else. Even if you don't need to lower your cost of living, you do it for somebody else. Think about others. And then I would allude to the teachings of Christ. You've got to care about other people. You've got to love other people. If you don't, you're nobody. Maybe God turns out to be just like you on Judgment Day, and you stand before God and you say, well, what did you care? Did you care about other people that weren't as competent, perhaps you might say, as making their way in the world as you were? And so maybe in the next realm, you're going to be the one that's on the receiving end of the bogus scene, okay? Whatever that bogus scene is, you know what it is for a lot of people here. These are your brothers and sisters living and dying out in the cold. That's a bogus scene. So you've got to care. If you don't care, you can't expect anybody to care about you. So I'm really everybody's friend. I'm a friend to my enemies because this is serious business I get into. This is about the hereafter, where we're going from here, not just putting all your, you know, marbles in one place, okay? Don't put all your eggs in one